All right, YouTube, you may have seen that Ted Cruz has been utterly and completely annihilated in the state of Indiana. It's not a surprise. I said there was about a 90% chance Trump would win. I held back slightly specifically because, remember, there was that one outlier poll. There was the possibility that that poll was actually correct, and thus, if that had been right, Trump's momentum simply would have closed the gap. It wouldn't have allowed him to win the state. Even in an open primary, you can't count on, 10, 11 points of extra support from independent voters. It turns out, of course, it was roughly in line with the polls showing Trump, the last three, showing him ahead by the mid-teens. Actually, it's a little bit more. I believe it's 18 points ahead currently. 20 was what he was leading by for some time. So Ted Cruz has been utterly destroyed, let's face it. He might as well drop out. Not only can he no longer prevent Trump from getting 1237, not only can he no longer catch up to Trump and have even one more delegate than Trump on the first ballot, it's not even clear now that there's a mathematical way forward for Ted Cruz and John Kasich to stop him from getting more than 1237. It's no longer possible potentially for them to actually do that, in which case there's really no reason for them to be in the race. Now, nobody's surprised if Kasich sticks it in, because Kasich hasn't been able to get there for some time now, since long before New York ever voted. So what reason? He's getting free food. That's obviously what he cares about. He's sort of in there, I guess, for the can be viable VP option if no one hits 1237 thing. But he's getting free food on the backs of his corporate donors. What the hell does he want to drop out for? But Ted Cruz failed, but attempted to run a serious campaign. Now it's looking a lot less serious. He spent weeks talking about how Indiana was pivotal, how he had to win Indiana. If you don't win Indiana, you don't have your finger on the pulse of the nation. You're a total loser if you don't win in Indiana. And then he loses Indiana by almost 20 points. This he's going to go back to Colorado. He's going to get another pound of weed, and he's going to smoke it all in one sitting. And at the end of the night, most individuals are going to say, yes, it's time for the Republican Party to really accede to the wishes of the actual voters who have made it pretty clear. They're not buying the whole Canadian-Cuban thing of Cruz. They don't really care about Kasich. Yeah, he's funny dude. He eats a lot of food. That's really great. But does he have a chance? No. No, you could go to ballot number fucking 65 and Kasich still wouldn't be the nominee. At this point, you've even got Nate Silver, who, remember, 3 or 4 months ago, he continued to talk about Trump as the meme candidate who would surely collapse any day now. Back when some of us said, no, Trump's actually in it to win it. Whether he gets to 1237 or not, you can debate, but he's certainly not a joke candidate. Nate Silver still stuck with that until fairly recently, until well after Super Tuesday. It was around the time of Arizona and Utah that he started taking him truly seriously and laid off that attack line. It's gotten to the point where Trump, he will hit 1237. There's no longer a question of that. He's probably going to get every delegate tonight. That is, instead of getting the statewide delegates, he wins by a vote. He gets the statewide delegates. He gets some of the regional delegates. Good night for Trump. That would have been more than enough to seal the deal. Instead, he comes in, destroys Ted Cruz, gets more votes than Cruz and Kasich combined, wins probably every delegate. I think there's like 1 or 2 delegates still up in the air, and that's all. He's going to win West Virginia. Everyone knows that at this point. He's got New Jersey in the bag. What more does he want? That gets him so close to 1237 that he could lose handily in California and still hit 1237. It's better than he could have ever hoped for. You've got Nate Silver, again, who discounted him for so long, saying he could coast past 1,400 delegates. You got to realize, if he gets 1237 in pledged delegates, so that people know he wins on the first ballot, a lot of those unpledged delegates that otherwise would have leaned towards somebody else will amalgamate behind him too, to make him look stronger, to save the party some trouble. He probably would get past 1,400, might get higher than that. So yeah, and right now, the big news of the night for those that are more on the alt-right side supporting Trump is really the epic meltdown of Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro is a fairly young Republican. He's a wackadoodle. He's a sort of a Tea Party Zionist. That is, he's the sort of person who makes up the core of support for Ted Cruz. He wants an Israel first platform for the United States. He doesn't want an America first platform, and he's consistently said Trump would be bad news. And he's gotten more and more violent in his rhetoric as time goes on, to the point at which tonight he is launching tweet after tweet after tweet about all the racist subhumans attacking him, and Adolf Scheckelstein, and how bad Milo is, and the alt-right are just barbarians. And I think my favorite, calling Donald Trump a progressive. This is so far out there in my mind. I'm not even a Donald Trump supporter, strictly speaking. I'm a libertarian who just realizes he'll be the GOP nominee. I find myself astonished at how retarded this dude is. I mean, it's bad enough. You take somebody like Nate Silver, who he generally leans left. He's not completely a partisan hack. He's got some skills. His algorithms generally work really well, and he's gotten better over time. Let's at least give him credit for that. He's come to the same conclusion that many other people had a couple of months ago. But at least he came to that conclusion. He's not pretending. He's not putting his head in the sand like a lot of people still are doing, like Ben Shapiro. So let's give him credit for that. You've got a lot of people like that saying, yes, Trump's inevitable now. You've still got Ben Shapiro now tweeting out. Now keep in mind, Republican hack, Republican partisan, formerly of Breitbart, sort of the National Review, the Glenn Beck crowd, amalgamated behind Ted Cruz, the last establishment Republican that was seen as viable until tonight. Now he's no longer viable. He'll crumble. That's my prediction. Saying that Trump is a progressive, which let's ask some progressives. Let's ask some of Elizabeth Warren's friends out there. Do you feel that Trump is sort of a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren progressive? I'm going to guess the answer is probably no. Saying that he can't win in November, almost ceding the election. This is somebody who has spent half of his life, like almost just shortly after becoming an adult. I think he's my age, spending all of that time since sort of the Obama era shilling for the Republican Party until big, bad, mean Donald Trump comes along to say it's America first and not Israel first, or America first and not GOP Jesus first. And then all of a sudden he pretends to have a problem with it. I mean, it's fantastic. Glenn Beck is literally, by his own admission online, he said earlier, hours ago before the results started coming in, oh, if Cruz doesn't win tonight, I'll be on suicide watch. You know, he spent the last 24 hours unironically fasting. And this is a couple days after he put little glasses on with some of his friends. This was very funny. People thought this was great. He had a bowl of crushed up Cheetos and dunked his face in it so that I guess the idea was to turn his face orange so he would look like Trump or something. He spent the last 24 hours praying to the Mormon Jesus and to his literal, physical, biological father Elohim, who literally raped Mary, according to Mormon tradition. He spent the last 24 hours praying for Ted Cruz to win. Your prayers weren't answered, Mr. Beck. Is there any more evidence you need that Mormonism's considered heretical even by the average mainline Christian? People need to get real here. The fact that somebody like myself, who is not in the Republican Party, I'm not registered as a Republican, I voted for Obama in 2012, I had a huge fucking problem with Bush because of the Iraq War. Yeah, I voted for Ron Paul. He was a Republican, but he claimed, he was a paleocon, okay? There's a little bit of a difference between him and fucking John McCain or a Mitt Romney, let's face it. Not a Republican. From the outside looking in, I said, yeah, some time ago, Trump is almost certainly going to win this. And it didn't require Indiana for him to be inevitable. He was already inevitable. All these people who are actually within the Republican core, like Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck, are so fucked out about Donald Trump that even though I'm not a Republican, and I can see it, they're partisan Republicans. Supposedly it's in their best interest for their party to win, and yet they don't see that Donald Trump is inevitable. And now that he wins Indiana, I half expect to see in the news tomorrow, Glenn Beck kills self, or Ben Shapiro goes missing and they find him hanging under a highway overpass or something. You know, like he's going to go off himself in pure sorrow that his candidate didn't win. To hear these idiots talk, you'd think that's the case. Meanwhile, you have some mainline Republican like Megyn Kelly. She's taking it just fine. And to the Trump fans, if you're smart, you'll lay off Megyn Kelly because it's quite clear she had a chat with Trump and they're now on decent terms. Obviously, she's a partisan. She just wants whoever the Republican is to win. She sparred with him before. Now, obviously, she doesn't give a fuck. If you want to go after someone, go after this retarded Ben Shapiro. Realize the Israelis really don't like Donald Trump because they're afraid he'll put your country before Israel. That's really their problem. The ADL came out and told him to drop that slogan because it made them feel like he might be a Nazi or something. So yeah, Cruz has lost. He's out. Whether he drops out or not, he is doomed. Trump will be the Republican nominee. I told you this before Indiana even voted. I said a couple days ago, it doesn't even matter if it wouldn't matter if Cruz got 100% of the delegates there. Because the victory is purely psychological. Mathematically, Trump already would have hit 1237. He would have gotten it anyway. Now, not only should you be assured that that's certain, but psychologically, increasingly, it looks like Kasich fans have just up and abandoned him. That's not a phenomenon that's going to stop. Ted Cruz means absolutely nothing. People have seen through his charade. Clearly the whole, well, Jesus will smite us if you don't vote for me thing that his father launched out didn't work. Fiorina hurt him. The deal with Kasich hurt him. He's made a hell of a lot of mistakes. And, I mean, for all I know, right now he's making a speech and saying he's going to drop out. He could. It would be advisable for him to drop out because he will make a fool of himself if he doesn't. Just imagine going ahead, Nebraska, which used to be like, oh, well, you know, Ted Cruz probably has this. You know, it's in the Kansas region. And, of course, that area is like heavily Cruz territory. It's full of evangelicals and so forth. That's not a sure bet anymore. That's no longer a safe Cruz state. Now that's, I guess, a toss-up state. The only one left that's like safe Cruz is Montana. For all we know, Trump could win Montana. If that happens, then Cruz not only looks defeated, he looks absolutely piteous. So, yeah. I would say people need to see the writing on the wall. Ben Shapiro, somebody needs to like do a health check on him or something to make sure he doesn't have any shoelaces or sharpened pencils in his home at this point. As for Glenn Beck, drag him to the fucking nut ward. The dude already said he would like be suicidal if Trump won tonight. Well, Trump just absolutely annihilated his candidate. Somebody needs to do a check-in on poor Mr. Beck. Unless he wants to come out and publicly admit that he says all this shit for giggles and for money, in which case, okay. Of course, the Blaze is going downhill fast. You know, the Blaze is going downhill about as fast as Gawker is, and Hulk just said he's going to sue them a second time over some unrelated bullshit regarding not his sex tape, but some other fiasco that they had there. I think one of his racist phone call or whatever. So you can see how that's going to work out. Trump will be the nominee. It will be a Trump versus... well, actually, we can't say who the Democrat will be because it looks like Bernie might actually win the state of Indiana. So we'll hold out on the Democratic side. I still think it's like a 99% chance Hillary has it. But at least there's hope for somebody other than Hillary. There's not hope for somebody other than Trump. There's a 0% chance he loses. At least on the other side, you got like a 0.1% chance that Hillary somehow is defeated, which would be great for the country not to have Hillary in there anymore. We don't need any more Clintons, even as candidates, let alone actually running the country. Hillary Clinton's more retarded than Ted Cruz is, and that's saying something. So, yeah, you have Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, all these other morons melting down. But Trump, clearly, he outperformed expectations yet again, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise because it was always a lot more likely than the opposite that he would underperform. That's about all. Peace out.